but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Bray. It is the Champions League show, and as promised, always have a different guest on each week from a different football club, and I'm delighted to welcome fellow thespian, actor, call him what you will, Gary Webster. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm breathing, as I always say. If I wake up breathing, I can change the world. Very happy to be here, Steve. You're looking very well, I must say.
Thank you very much, mate. Great to see you again. We had you on last year to talk about Arsenal, and I thought we'll get you on to talk about the Arsenal again, and obviously talk about Newcastle United as well. Another transfer through the door for Newcastle today. Livramento has to pass his medical, of course, after recovering from an ACL, but he is on his way to Newcastle for his medical from Southampton. Another good player who can play in a lot of different areas, on the pitch. Only a young guy as well. So I mean, that for me is just Newcastle's transfer window ticking along nicely. Three good players, but we haven't come to talk about that tonight. We've come to talk about Champions League and basically just get a feel, I guess, from other clubs' fans as what they're feeling. First of all, about Newcastle, maybe in the Premier League. Let's start with that, Gary. Newcastle, basically annual relegation battlers, and if they were in a relegation battle, they were in the Championship. And the takeover, it didn't matter who it was going to be. It could have been the Saudis, it could have been Americans, it could have been aliens. It doesn't matter, Gary. Forget about the politics for today.
Sure.
Let's concentrate on Newcastle being taken over. We always said, you said it to me many a time, Newcastle's a sleeping giant. If they get the right owners with the right investment, they'll do okay. What did you make of Newcastle's, season last season, Gary?
Oh, well, I thought for a long time in the season, for a long part of the season, they were a big danger. I think they were gunning for the title. And I know a lot of people thought, well, that's a bit premature. This is only the first season that they've really had a crack at it under Eddie Howe. But you could see with what he brought to the team already, the togetherness. He excited the fans again. The whole town, again, thankfully, was behind the team in respect of this is the Newcastle they've been wanting for years, especially since they've been back in the Premiership. And I thought he delivered. And it was only a bit like Arsenal. I think you ran out of steam, and I think that's squad size and the fact that Man City could maintain such a great winning streak. But I think that sleeping giant is now awake. Because if you think of where they were and what they were battling, whether it be ownership or team camaraderie or a manager that was going to take them forward, a young, vibrant manager, that's exactly what's being delivered now. And I think, for me, that Newcastle will very quickly, as Arsenal were, become everyone's second favourite team. I think they're almost there already because of the passion. And I think they're thoroughly going to enjoy the Champions League. I think they're going to absolutely nail it. I really do.
It's always difficult for a team to, go on a great run, do well in the Premier League, qualify for European competition, whether that be Europa League, Champions League, whatever it is. The following season, it always seems to be a little bit more difficult because of the travelling. I think, Gary, I think that's the big thing. I've spoken to Rob Lee this week. We did a couple of talk-ins together, and Rob said, he always found it okay. He says, but he does know players that did struggle with the playing more games in a week. He said he'd rather play 7 games a week than do training. That was just the way he was. But everybody's different. So will Newcastle struggle, do you think, a little bit with that, Gary, this year?
Well, I think they might. I mean, to me, the game's the same as it always was, whether it's 50 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 now. So the players have got to learn how to cope with that. The squads are bigger. I think what comes with it is the stress of expectation, because everyone now, it's not like you want to qualify for the Champions League and then go out fourth in the group stages. People will now be expecting Newcastle to get out of their group, whatever one they're in. And then once they're into the knockout stages, it's a free-for-all. As we know, cup football, of which the English clubs excel in, It could be anyway. And as that continues, the amount of money that's being put in, they want to be also not putting all their eggs in the one basket of the Champions League. They'll be fighting for the title to qualify again, desperate for a cup. So the League Cup, as we used to call it, the FA Cup, become vitally important. No one's going to be I think teams like Newcastle now, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, we know, City have always respected it, I think, but we now know that we've got to go for everything. So whatever happens next year, say for Arteta, or this season, he needs to win a trophy, whether that be one of the cups or the title or whatever. So I think it's the expectation now, and squad size will play a crucial part in that, and quality of squad size. Arsenal had a good squad size, Newcastle did, but there's a big difference between the first 11 and the second 11. I think that's what caught Arsenal out, and I think it's what caught Newcastle out. But Eddie Howe's he's been masterful at his buying and selling, done it so well. He hasn't abused the money that's come in. He's done it very, very cleverly. I've got enormous respect for him.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to hear eventually confirmed by the club. Unai Emery was the first choice.
Really?
Yeah, he was the first choice at Newcastle. I mean, when you see the job that Eddie Howe's done, it's hard to say whether Emery could have done any better. But you obviously know a bit more about Emery. I mean, would he have been a Newcastle fit, do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, it's like us thespians, what you do in your younger days compared to if only we had the chance to go back and play different roles that we played when we were younger, having the wise head on that we were older. So Unai Emery, a club like Arsenal, a club like Newcastle, may have been too early for him even 5 or 6 years ago. How he slotted in at Villa seems the perfect fit. Would he have been right for Newcastle? I'm not sure. It's a massive undertaking. Not to say that Villa's not, but the expectation, and also with what happened previously, the previous managers, I think he's a bit like a Benitez for me, Rafa Benitez, but there's no doubting that he's an excellent manager. But I just feel that Eddie Howe was the right fit at the right time. No one was expecting too much, and he's delivered the world, really. I mean, Champions League football compared to when we spoke last year or 3 or 4 years ago. And, and it is great and it's encouraging to see. I mean, I think I joked with you last year that, look out Southgate, because he has to be the next England manager. There's no doubt. I can't think of any other candidates that would be better than Eddie Howe. But at the moment, I think he'll have them prepared. He'll have them prepared for the Champions League. And I think he won't be expected. He'll want to get out of that group stage, and he'll want to go as far as he can in that tournament.
It's interesting because when he came on and said that last year, it did cause a debate on our timeline for a couple of days. And the England job, I think, will certainly Eddie Howe has been asked about it and already said from his perspective, he's happy where he is. Newcastle comes first. I think maybe at some point in the future he'd probably love to take it, but how long is he going to go on in Newcastle? Is this the start of an Alex Ferguson type reign? You just don't know. Are Newcastle's new owners going to buck the trend of previous big gun owners, come in and when there's a first dip in form, bin the man who's got them on their way? Man City and Mark Hughes springs to mind. It is interesting, and the Champions League for me as well. I think it's the atmosphere, Gary. I mean, going down to the Emirates for that first time, when maybe Arsenal had missed out on the Champions League in the past, and then getting back into the stadium, taking your seat, or Highbury back in the day. It's just when you hear the music, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, Gary, don't they?
Oh no, it's a fantastic atmosphere, and it is the elite level. I mean, we were all brought up on the European Cup and qualification for that, and now I can see where the thought of a European League comes from, because just with the group stages, if you've got a Barcelona in your group, a Bayern Munich, you're playing the top quality early on in the tournament, and you're talking about full stadiums, and you're pitching your very best against the very best, and it's it just has that aura about it, and you certainly unite when you're out of it. We've obviously got complacent. 20 years qualification. We've felt it since we've been out. For for all the good that the Europa League does and the Conference League, haven't got a problem with that. It's European football. I mean, if you remember, we used to have European Cup, UEFA Cup, Cup Winners' Cup, all great tournaments to be in. But certainly the Champions League, for any aspiring team and young manager, which Eddie Howe is, relative terms, it's a great achievement, you know. And the difficulty is sustaining a good run in the Champions League, as well as making it into the top four again next year. Because I think once you've got a taste of it, Stephen, now like with us as well, we want it every year then, and it becomes more and more difficult, of course.
It's 20 odd years since Newcastle last stepped foot in the Champions League.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean that in itself is crazy. Not 20 years for Europe. Alan Pardew guided us there under Mike Ashley's reign,
Right.
you know, for a brief sojourn into the Europa. But 20 odd years now since the Champions League. So I guess the question I would ask you, having seen Arsenal take on teams in the Champions League in recent years, is has European football changed a great deal at that level? You've already said we're playing the elite teams, we know that, but you know, the Premier League at this moment in time is still the best league in the world. So what have Newcastle got to face in terms of opposition? Are we going to be worried about teams from certain countries, do you think, or do you think we should just embrace it and just see how far we can go?
I think the thinking now behind the Premier League teams in the Champions League is where we used to think maybe defensively against pitching ourselves against the offense of the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, the Bayern Munichs, the Juventuses. Now I think we just play our own game. And I think actually we've got the march in the Premier League of how it's evolved on many of those European teams now. And I think they're having to look at their style of football. I mean, we all learned from the Barcelona team a ticky-tacky football. And that was the bar that was raised to, and we all had to think maybe we're looking at this in the wrong light. But I think now, the way City play, the way Newcastle play, high press, counter-attacking, good defensively, great goalkeepers. You know, I think it was almost a reversal. We're like the season before last. I think when Real Madrid beat City and they beat some, and they went ahead and won it. It was almost became the British Cup team. Yeah. They turned it on in the cup games when really they should have got nowhere near getting to that final or winning it, because sustainability was that City, Chelsea at the time, Liverpool, were all getting to those quarterfinals, semi-finals, and I think the four teams that are going in now, I think they're going to be the teams to beat, and I don't fear Barcelona. I don't feel Bayern Munich. Juventus, I think, are not in it. Your Inter, your AC Milan, Real Madrid will always be a tough team, and I think Bellingham so far has shown how good he is. But I think we fear each other as opposed to the European teams at the moment.
Interesting. What's the standard of officials like? Because I remember some pretty poor officiating in the Champions League and in the Europa League in our time over the years. Has it got any better?
I don't know. They always try to say, I mean, we have VAR now, don't we? So we can at least keep them in check. And goodness knows how many brown envelopes used to get passed around. I mean, without being slanderous about anyone, brown envelopes with probably tickets to the plane home or whatever. But I think the level of officiating has got a lot better. Obviously, it can be checked by VAR these days. But I think it's just frustrating. You get the decisions, you don't get the decisions. But I think, and the speed, I mean, I do realise, that the speed of the game now is, the referees have to be super fit. Whereas back in the day of the Clive Thomases and the Roger Ellar, there was David Ellery and the
David Ellery, yeah.
Jack Taylor, of course.
Trelford Mills.
Oh, yeah. He was my favourite. The grey-haired guy, he was fantastic. But I think I got sent off by him in a charity match. But I think I think it's probably the best it's ever been in real terms. And with VAR, it's they've got their check system in place. So, but I think it'll be the same as ever. I think it's going to be. I think Newcastle will embrace it, and I think they'll go a long way. I've got a feeling they'll go a long way.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It certainly is. I mean, Newcastle fans are really looking forward to it. Ticketing, Gary, is also something interesting. I had Million from Manchester United's supporters at club last week. He's a good close friend, and you know, he was saying, you know, he was giving us his explanation behind it. Is it easy to get tickets at the Arsenal for Champions League, or is it difficult?
I think it's pretty difficult. I mean, I'm not one of the kind of upper echelon member season ticket holders or anything like that. So we get availability for the League Cup, the EPL, the Carabao Cup. But I think it's like any club. You know, most of those Champions League nights are sold out. Whether or not the people who have the tickets actually turn up is another thing. You know, so sometimes, you know, it does infuriate, I think, the fans that watch on the television, see sometimes empty seats because people haven't made it or people have passed the tickets on to somebody else. But I think that's just the nature of football these days. But I'm, you know, without wanting to pay ridiculous prices, you know, I'm of that age now. You know, my son and I, we go sometimes to, as I say, to the League Cup games. But we're quite happy to watch it on the TV. You know, you kind of, the coverage is so good these days. But obviously, there's nothing, and especially at a club like Newcastle, there's nothing like being in the stadium. But I mean, I think you could sell out at the ground. You could sell out 10 times over, couldn't you, on any game?
I've got to ask you. Obviously, we've got a lot of debate going on at the moment about ticketing. So that that in itself, have you progressed into digital ticketing now at the ground? You know, when you go for the Carabao Cup, for example, or is it still a hard ticket at Arsenal?
No, it's all sort of swipe. It's like you know, barcodes and stuff. You know, I mean, and it's gone of the day. I remember I was saying to my son some time ago about when I first went to Highbury. You sent off for the tickets, and the tickets came to you, and you went in and you showed them and you could keep the stub and everything else. But now it's Arsenal's. It's so efficient. It's so 21st century. You know, so. But still, it's I do think it's a different kind of fan base. I think I don't know if it's affecting Newcastle yet, but certainly when I see the Emirates, the kind of attitude of what they're going to see and the kind of etiquette of how you go about it. I mean, I remember standing. I remember in the early days before we left the Highbury, and you know, you would never miss a minute of it. You stayed until the end. You had your coffee or you went for your pee break at halftime, but you were back for the start of the second half. And you see swaths of empty seating as people filter back from having their pint or having their prawn sandwich, as the good Sir Roy would say. And, you know, it does baffle me sometimes because, as we all know, and as Cloughie always said, you know, football can be changed in a second. And leaving early or not being there for the start of the game or not being there for the start of the second half. But I don't know if Newcastle is up from that, but certainly I think it's quite prevalent. Maybe it's the London clubs. Maybe there's so many people there going there on an event, a night, a day out, that they're getting embroiled in all the other stuff that goes with it. You know, having something to eat, having a pint, and for me, it's always the football. It's always the football and the camaraderie of the crowd. You know.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, it's become more family friendly. I mean, we go back to the years. Definitely. We go back to the years, sadly, of you know, fencing, perimeter fencing.
Oh God, yeah.
Pre-Hillsborough High School days, and you know, it was a different situation then. Hooliganism was rife because of the people just weren't happy in their lives in the 70s and 80s, and it just became a way of getting rid of that anger. But nowadays, it's more of a family-friendly experience. We haven't gone quite down the American, you know, hot dogs and popcorn and you know, big glasses of pop in the stands yet. But not for the want of trying by some clubs and owners. But the stadium is another thing. You said there would be big demand at Newcastle. There's certainly a feeling that we do need to increase. There's been talk though potentially of moving a stadium. We talked about it on our show last night. Some fans would be up for that as long as it was a simple reversal of the stand, moving into Leazes Park, and then Newcastle United would then usurp that land on St James's, and that would become the park. There could be that kind of development. However, it looks as if short term Newcastle will build on the ground as it is. They're certainly doing some surveys to find out, question is, Arsenal have been through this. So Highbury was my favourite away ground. I
Yeah,
loved
sure.
Anfield. I loved Anfield for the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But Highbury was my favourite ground as an away fan. The seating was great. It was a great atmosphere. It was easy to get to. It was cost effective because they didn't rip you off at Arsenal. And it had a bit of history about it. You walked in, you got it. You know, you could feel that, you know, the players gone by in there, and it was just there was something about it. You know what I mean? I think with St James's Park, you get exactly the same at this moment in time. So my question is, and this is what Barry's just asked in the chat, read me mind. How did you feel about leaving Highbury?
I mean, for me, it was very sad, but I think a necessity. Because, you know, once, I mean, I've stood there in 57,500 people at the North Bank. I went and saw Geordie Armstrong's testimonial with 57,000 against Barcelona on a wet Wednesday or whatever. Amazing atmosphere. But once they reduced it to all seating, which they quite rightly had to do, 38,000 isn't going to cut it back then for revenue, for receipts, for making the club, you know, progress forward. I think now that's not necessarily the match day receipts are not necessarily as important as they used to be because of the vast amounts of money that are being chucked in by the television deals, you know. So, you know, that you could have a Brighton or you could have a Brentford, very, you know, built new stadium, 22, 25,000, more than adequate. And if they get into Europe and they're going to make a lot of turnover from that. So, but at the same time, I think, so when I go to the Emirates, you know, it's a fantastic stadium. I can look at it architecturally, safety-wise, comfort. It's perfect for the 21st century because no one wants to go through what we used to go through when you were hoarded round, really like animals. I mean, I remember being at Wembley and having to watch out because the toilets were so packed. I'm sorry, it's like 6 o'clock. Toilets were so packed that people would just pee at the top of the stands and it would dribble down. And yet, I mean, we were treated like animals, you know. So, but certainly, I think with somewhere like Arsenal, I mean, it was just so majestic. I take my son there, we go around the front and you look at the Art Deco architecture of it all. And I had, you know, I was very fortunate. I actually played on the pitch, and it always used to be like, it had a slight camber to it. You could over across the thing, and it undersaw heating. And I was telling my wife just the other day, at half-time, the half-time entertainment used to be the Metropolitan Police Band, and there used to be about 20 musicians, and they would be beating along like the old sort of big bass drum and clacking away like that. And he used to have a huge 6-foot baton, and he would lead the Metropolitan Police Band around. And the entertainment was that when he got to the North Bank, he would raise it and he would throw it up into the air, spin it, and catch it. And the North Bank would erupt and we'd all cheer, all secretly hoping he would drop it, you know. And that was there was no video screens. Look back at the match highlights. It was the Metropolitan Police. And half the time they got boo and all of that because they were the old Bill, you know. So, I mean, you miss those days, but progress, you can't halt progress, Steve. You can't halt.
No, you can't. Of course, it gave you an increased, attendance at your ground, and of course that makes extra revenue, which is a nice segue into the three letters that Newcastle fans can't stand. I'm not sure what you feel. FFP, financial fair play.
Oh,
so, Gary, let's face it, mate. This has been brought in. The clubs wrote their own rules, and they still break them, and there doesn't seem to be any punishment, Gary.
To me, it's a farce. Nobody adheres to it, and if you do adhere, if you adhere to it, then you play by the rules and you suffer for it. Because all those clubs who don't adhere to it, they get away with it. They go and win league titles. They go and win European Cups. They win everything else. And then 4 years down the line, after a lengthy investigation, some charges are brought, and and in the end, they'll end up with a fine or something that are issued against super wealthy clubs. So I've always been of the thinking, go out there and spend and take the consequences later. You know, there's no kind of organisation in the world, be it UEFA or FIFA, because I think half the time everyone's involved without casting aspersions, allegedly, that would come back and say, okay, for example, Man City or whoever, Manchester, Barcelona, or whatever, we're now going to, you know, take 3 titles off you. You'd be wrapped up in the courts for 20 years, you know, but the team would have died by the time they got the titles taken away. So I think it has to be looked at again, or, you know, a kind of revamp of it, or institute the punishments properly, you know. And I mean, I know Juventus had problems and you know, different, but that's for bribery that's circling around the world. If you're going to have rules and regulations, you've got to be able to have the power to implement them against everybody and anybody, you know. So I don't really see. I don't think it actually plays any part in how people run their clubs. In all honesty.
Okay, Barry Hogan's asked a question. He says, how does Gary feel about Arsenal being known as one of the top 6 cartel? Does he feel that is unfair on the club?
I think it's unfair on the supporters and the players and probably the club, the badge. But I guess that they would be included in that bracket. But then I think it's up to if there's a top 6, a top 12, a top 4, to act accordingly and lead the way rather than play some game that is detrimental to the other clubs. And I think that's where it takes real leadership. And I think the kind of announcement or the instigation of the Super League really caught all these people out at the top. They thought that it would be sort of welcomed with open arms because they thought in our game, for example, that Manchester United fans would like playing Barcelona on a bi-weekly basis or Real Madrid. No, we like the fact that Brentford can come up on the playoffs and then Newcastle or United or Liverpool as an Arsenal fan, they can go to Brentford and get beaten. We like relegation and promotion. That's part of our game. It's not part of the American system, and I think that's where they've nicked it from. It's not a franchise, our clubs. Our clubs are meted within the community and within the social kind of tapestry of what an area is about. And I think it's not all about that. You know, I mean, bad and sad as it's been, Newcastle relegated and all that, you know, Everton came so close, anything like that, but it's still part of our game. And so I think the top 6 should lead in a better manner, really, most of the time. I think they let down some of the smaller clubs.
Okay, we're halfway through the show. Time for the ad break.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces handmade in Cumbria. You can order them from their website, mrvickys.co.uk, or by telephoning 01768 210 102. A big thanks also to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. They're an agile and dedicated workwear provider. Welcome back as well to United Travel. They are a UK coaches firm and they are based in the Northeast. They've got 2024 tours and you can contact them on 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, and they've got a website which is unitedgrouptravel.com. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. Big thanks to them for their sponsorship. Big thanks as well to Media Arts, and they supply all the video technology. If you want to become a member and get a cup, a pen, a membership card, and a scarf, then get your smartphone and put it over this QR code. It will take you straight to the membership pack. It's a £25 one-off fee. You can also go to NUFC Matters website and search membership pack to book today. If you want to help the channel, then subscribe to it by hitting the subscribe button. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to your other social media. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. Don't forget, we help the food bank on this channel. If you want to do so virtually, Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. The Alan Shearer raffle is back on. 150 tickets, £1 a ticket. Win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter today at nufcmatters.com.
Okay, welcome back to the second half. I like Copy says if we broke financial fair play, then they would immediately impose a European ban on us. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people feel like that. Bill says the problem with financial fair play, in my opinion, is if UEFA and the Premier League try to properly enforce it, they'll get demolished in the courts on constraint of trade grounds. Benny, good evening, says hilarious the difference a few weeks made around Wenger leaving. Plenty of the Arsenal fan base got toxic wanting him out. A couple of weeks later, clapping as Wenger walks on the red carpet at the Emirates. So, I remember that, Benny, and I'm sure Gary does as well. Mikey Wynn said, who played for Newcastle, Sunderland and the Smugs in the same season? The Houghton Colliery Welfare Band. So it wasn't just Arsenal who used to have a band going around. So it's probably one of those things from back in the day. Newcastle United are going to be featuring only 4 episodes, which I'm a little bit disappointed in, I've got to be honest, on Amazon, a TV series. Now, last week, Gary, because I knew you were coming on, I made a point of sitting and watching the All or Nothing Arsenal documentary, and only because I wanted to immerse myself in your team and also get a feeling of what Newcastle is going to be like. Now, Arsenal did 8 episodes, double the amount of episodes, so it was great to watch. It was good to see, I've got to be honest, right at the end, Arteta and Arsenal at Newcastle. Of course, that was the season that Newcastle stayed up. Newcastle won. Arteta wasn't very happy. I did snigger at the fact that our dressing room for away teams seems to be the worst. That used to be the home dressing room. It's awful, just breeze blocks and everything, and it's so tight, etc. But I've just got to, I mean, what did you feel when Arsenal were on TV, and that was there a bit of concern? Was there a few cringeworthy moments?
Us Southerners aren't used to those breeze blocks. We're expecting carpeted walls, you know. we were put off by that. We couldn't face it as we went out to play. I've got to say, I was so gutted after Spurs had done the All or Nothing, that they announced that Arsenal would be doing it, because for me, Arsenal it's royalty. It's my club. It's my life. What are we doing inviting the cameras in and all that? I was absolutely, very much against it. Then eventually I did watch it because someone said, actually, it's not bad. And I have to say, it was a huge success. I completely, I did tweet and say, no, I've got this wrong. And it gave an insight, very much more of an insight into how Arteta, the team, Adu at the time, Kroenke, came in and stood around for the first episode, but I think it gave a far better insight and a far better explanation. It was almost like the fans had a chance to see the process of what was going on, rather than the problem with being a fan is we don't hear too much. We get so lambasted by or blasted by what's happening on Sky Sports News, etc. We don't often get to see the reality of what is actually happening and why certain decisions are made, and how certain players have to be treated and encouraged or whatever. And I thought it was a great eye opener. And I have to say, as I said to my kids and stuff, I said, my view of Arteta has changed. My view did change at that point, having watched a couple of episodes. And you realise that he's doing his best and he's trying to do the best for the club. So I think it's a good way to go about things. And I think Newcastle fans, having been under the last regime where nothing seemed to be coming out, nobody knew what the hell was going on, it'd be a good insight to see what does go on, what is happening. And I think you probably come away from it going, I've got respect for Eddie Howe, but now it's been multiplied because of what I've seen, how he goes about his business. And I think he'd be a great, it'd be very interesting, but I think you'd be very happy with it, because I was surprised how good it was.
Yeah, it was maybe 8 episodes is too much. I mean, maybe if Newcastle had done 6. I think there'd been 6, it would have been okay. I mean, we literally went through the full season. Now, one person who featured on there as well, another reason which was good for me to watch, was Kieran Tierney, obviously the Scottish fullback who has been heavily linked with Newcastle this season. I think it was Rob Holden last year when we spoke, Gary. So Tierney's now Tierney's now been linked. Potentially because it's a move back north, maybe, I don't know. But on the documentary, I learned a bit more about his injury. I knew he'd been injured. There is this myth that Tierney's always injured. He's injury prone. It turns out that he played in a game. He got an injury on his knee. He didn't report it to the physio. He then went on to play another 5 games without any issue. But then when he was at home, he got out of the shower, he twisted his knee, and that's how he got the long-term injury. So, to be honest, to me, that doesn't say he's injury prone. It says he's daft for not reporting the injury in the first place. But he's just unlucky the way he's come out of the shower. Clearly an underlying issue. You can never say whether it was, whether it was underlying or whether it was created by slip in the shower. Who knows? But it was interesting to see that. You got a feel for the guy as well. He seems like a grounded lad. How disappointed would you be if he left? And do you think Newcastle are still pursuing him?
Oh, I think I would be absolutely gutted if Tierney left. No, he's to me he should start. For me, he's a starter. Yeah. He's not a kind of erstwhile sub that comes on. He's an impact player. He's right from the beginning. His attitude. He's an Arsenal player through and through. I love the way he plays. I love his attitude. He's one of the good batch of Scottish players around at the moment. I think we're very lucky to have him. I think he's been a little bit hard done by the fact is that Zinchenko's come in, all very well and good, and plays a kind of different role. He moves into that midfield quite quickly, so he stops from being a 4 to a 3 at the back, and he's the extra man in midfield. Now, Tierney may have to learn that way of playing because I think that's the way Arteta wants to play. But certainly defensively, he's a cut above any other player that keep playing at left back. And I think defensively on that right-hand side, if you're an attacking team, is where a majority of goals came at crucial stages of our season. Liverpool, West Ham, the other draw we had. And I think that he's vital. And I would be gutted to lose him. And if I was Newcastle and I could get him for, anything under 40 million quid, you'd be, putting the flags out. Because I think a fully fit Kieran Tierney consistently will do a proper job for you. And I would be gutted if we let him go. And I think he deserves to start far more often. I really do. But Arteta just it doesn't seem that Arteta believes he can play the system that Arteta wants to play. And I think that's a great pity.
Yeah, no, well, it's interesting to hear, what I mean? You watch him week in, week out on TV for Arsenal and you get a good idea of what he can do. So I'm sure that'll cheer a few Newcastle fans up.
Any man that can wear short sleeves in -4, he's a Geordie through and through, really, isn't he?
He's Scottish. He's Scottish. And Scottish people call Geordies Scots people with their heads kicked in. So it's, it's an interesting...
If he's in the big market in his cap sleeves and a pair of shorts, that's only for the very few. Anything north of Sunderland, that's only for them, not us.
This last year, Gary, is there a player in Newcastle United's team or squad? If you could get him, you would take him to the Emirates this season?
Well, Almiron, I thought played very, I thought he was a revelation last season. And has been probably for the last couple of seasons. And on that right-hand side, where we seem to be perennially looking for cover for Saka, I would have tried to get him because the way he kind of cuts in on his left is very Saka-like, And I just think, but he's commanding a first-team place most weeks at Newcastle. But that's if I was going to be specific, because they've got great players across them. All over the pitch at the moment, Newcastle, and people who want to play, who give 100%, But I just think, we seem to be playing Saka on an overload, and that's what worries me about the Champions League, the cup games, the Premiership, that Saka will burn out because he plays almost every game last season, and we need good cover for him, and I think Almiron is someone who could do that.
Okay, that's a good shout. From your perspective, looking ahead to the season with Arsenal, how do you think you're going to do? It was a blow for you last year. I mean, you played some scintillating stuff and you led the way for a long time.
Yeah.
Manchester City are just relentless, and the acquisition of Haaland was always going to make it difficult. As long as he didn't get injured or suspended, he was always going to lead the way. And they hunted you down like a dog or a hound hunts a fox down, and eventually overtook you, and it was easy for them at the end. But what do you expect for Arsenal this season? Because Arteta's had a rough time. That documentary showed it. He was getting some stick. Arsenal fans wanted him out.
Yeah.
He pulled it round. He got them back up to where the Arsenal fans wanted to be. And then the following season, he almost wins the league. So what's your thoughts on this season?
Oh, well, I think we're on the right path now. And I think that documentary helped in convincing me that we were on the right path. But we are Arsenal. And as Billie Jean King always says, pressure is a privilege. So, he's going to get stick if he doesn't come up to the highest levels. And we don't, produce what the fans and the club and the badge expect. Yeah. And I know it's a very competitive world, but that's what it's all about. So I'm expecting better this season in terms of a trophy. I'm expecting close again in the title. With the advent of Declan Rice, who I think is a world-class player and was worth 100 million of anyone's money in today's prices. Why?
Newcastle did approach West Ham for him. Rob Lee's obviously, as I say, I saw him this week, and he said that Newcastle had approached, West Ham for Declan Rice. So there was a few suitors. So Arsenal have done well to get him, Gary.
Yeah, I do too, and I think the proximity of where he lives and Arsenal being in London, it's a bit that's like the Sol Campbell move, obviously for 105 million more, but that Sol wanted to stay in the environs of and close to family. I think Declan's the same, but for me it was never a problem. If it's 100, pay 100. Get him early doors. It was elongated out by the board and everyone else again. I think his quality will only make us better. I think I'm not sure on Havertz. I've got to be honest. I've got to be convinced. I'm not sure, but I'm always willing to give someone a chance. Timber looks like a great utility player. I think we've got to be expecting better, and I think it was only because we bottled it. There's no doubt. I think we bottled it in certain games that we suddenly realised 2-0 up against Liverpool, 2-0 up against West Ham, wherever we were. It was like, if we win these games, which is all we needed to do, then we're going to win it. And I think that seeped in actually on the pitch, and we began to get a little bit jittery. That's fine. That's a learning curve. I ain't got a problem with that. But you've got to be honest with yourself and think, now this time round, hopefully experience will teach us better. So I'll be surprised if we don't win. I'm expecting to win the title because I think Man City are going through a slight transition. I'm not sure Liverpool, Chelsea, United are where they used to be. I think Newcastle could be a big threat to us. I really do. Just because of the team and the team ethic and the playing for each other and the quality that you've got at the moment. But I agree with you. I think the Champions League, if we're also interested in that, like you guys, that is also going to will bear down on how well we do in the Premiership. I mean, if you're top three in March and you're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, what do you focus on?
Yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, Eddie Howe's come out this week.
For me personally, I would sacrifice the title because I'm getting older and I've never seen us win the Champions League. So I'll take the Champions League next season.
Well, that's an interesting take. Yeah, I mean, for Newcastle fans, a trophy is a must. I mean, we would all love to see a trophy. I think if we could get another bite of the cherry in the Carabao Cup, and this time go one step further and win it, I think that would be great. I think top four for Newcastle fans would be what they would want, which is what they would want. I think Eddie Howe has already come out and said Premierships were bread and butter. We've got to maintain the same standard as we did this season, next season. Champions League's an exciting journey, and I think that really is something, as you mentioned at the top of the programme, it's something you want more of. But, ultimately it's, I think, success for me, top four, and getting out of the Champions League group stages. Ultimately after that, a good cup run in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. That would be a successful season for me.
I think you're definitely winning a trophy this season. Definitely.
Okay, well, that's great stuff, mate. I just wish it was as simple as that. You've had some bad injury news this week. Gabriel Jesus is going to be out for a while. I've got to be honest. I don't think he fitted in as well at Arsenal as maybe everybody was expecting him to. And he got off to a good little start. Then he was out for a while, and I thought Arsenal played better without him.
I've got to say, I mean, I think his start was amazing, and his energy and what he brings to the team and the play. But ultimately, at the end, he's got to score goals. And now this is another injury, and let's hope he's not injury prone, which can really destroy some careers and upset the balance of the team on too many occasions. But I'm not sure he's a natural goal scorer. I think he's great across the front, and he's great to be as a creator. But ultimately, we need someone to knock in 20 plus goals. I'm not sure Eddie Nketiah is the right man for that either, because he's been there a long time. And I think, again, great squad player. Come on and get a goal in the last 10. When you need it, he's there, something different. But that bread and butter, I fancy Balogun. Why not? He's scored 20 odd goals in the French league. And my thing would have been, the minute that Ivan Toney got banned, I would have put a bid in for him. And I'd have bought him at the start of the summer. He doesn't start training again till September, and he would have been like a January signing. But I personally, as Arsenal, would have bought Ivan Toney.
I think Newcastle will go for him in January.
Well, I think you get him, and wherever you are situated in the league, if it's close, you could well win the league with that, because I think he's a different class. He's consistently proved it, and everyone doubts him. That guy can play, and he can play well, and he doesn't miss penalties.
No, he definitely doesn't, and it could be one of those where Newcastle gave him away more or less and have to pay a hefty fee to bring him back. So it will be interesting. Tom says, Gary, with Gabriel Jesus being out, do you think Arsenal will go for another striker in this window?
I think we have to. I mean, far more than we need another goalkeeper. I just don't understand the Raya business. This idea that goalkeepers need competition. I don't think every other player on the pitch may be, but goalkeepers are essential, that you can't bring someone in of equal quality, because then it would be undermining confidence. And you could have a situation where having one goalkeeper for 3 games, he has a bad game, bring the other goalkeeper. It's no good for the defensive unit. Ramsdale's our number 1. Matt Turner's a good number 2. He's not quite there yet as number 1. He's learning his trade. All other clubs, no one challenges Nick Pope. No one's in there. You haven't got to keep it. You go, we could play him in it. I don't understand the thinking behind that. I'd much rather spend 40 million on a proven striker.
You mentioned Ramsdale. We've probably in an unenviable position. We've got probably the 2 best goalkeepers in England. Jordan Pickford, of course, is Southgate's pick in the moment for international. Yeah. But do you think Ramsdale's pushing for that England number 1 spot?
I think they all are. And I think fair play to Southgate. I mean, I'm a little bit critical of him at times, but Pickford's done nothing to warrant being left out. And I think whilst you're in that position, then it's your position. I think we're extremely lucky, as we were back in the 70s and early 80s, that we've got 3 goalkeepers, maybe 4, 5, that could warrant taking over that number 1 spot in the England shirt. Pope's one, Ramsdale's the other, and I'd be quite happy with any of them. Pickford hasn't done anything fundamentally wrong for him to be dropped, and until he does, he's the number 1. But boy, what an embarrassment of riches for Southgate to know that he can put in Pope or he can put in Ramsdale and feel equally as comfortable, and they command their box, So I think we're very lucky in that department. And I think Ramsdale and Pope could be crucial to how well Newcastle and Arsenal do this season.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see him back involved in the friendlies. Pope, he's been fantastic. He was a revelation last season as well. Livramento, then, lots of people posting this, that Livramento is coming to Newcastle. Harrison Ashby, the West Ham player that we signed, is on his way to Swansea on a season-long loan, which is good. He's a young kid. He can learn some experience, hopefully get some regular game time there. But lots of the news channels reporting that. I did get a couple of little things to stick on screen for you, which I thought you'd find interesting. Tottenham trophy cabinet since 2008. 2019 Audi Cup, 2022 summer transfer window, and 2023 Harry Kane got most headed goals in the season. And there was a Tiger Cup as well in 2023. What made me chuckle today was somebody sent this to me, was the letter that Spurs put out to supporters. The club recently consulted a number of supporters groups and conducted a survey of match-going supporters about a range of subjects relating to match-day atmosphere at Tottenham Stadium. The survey found that 64% of supporters in the South Stand felt a drummer could improve the match-day atmosphere. Gary, are Tottenham the club that keeps on giving?
Oh, for us, they are. We're back to normal. The status quo has been restored. I mean, I'm just thinking, is Cozy Powell still around? That's the only signing. That's their replacement for Kane. Put Cozy Powell in the stand and have a bit of dance for the devil.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about. I mean, the rivalry between you two teams, it's still as strong as ever, I take it.
It is on match day, I think. I mean, I've been in the Arsenal when the only tickets that were available were in the Tottenham end, and I've never experienced anything like that. That was awful. But you know, I remember when I was there when Henri got that famous goal with my brother at the time, and the only one we was right in the middle of a load of thugs and hard geezers and all that, and the only way we could celebrate was I quietly trod on my brother's toe, and that was us going like this, yes, but it was just like that. There you go. Because any more noise from us and we wouldn't have made it out alive, I don't think. But you know, I've always been like this. Listen, the rivalry's there, and it's very passionate, and it's very good, and it makes fantastic TV and sells the brand worldwide. But you know, come the World Cup, if Kane's going to take a penalty for us to win it, I'm 100% behind him. I want him to score as much as I want anyone else to score. You know, so same when Lineker played for Spurs. You know, that didn't detract me being overjoyed when he got 2 goals against Cameroon. You know, it's just, but certainly all bets are off once season starts.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, can you see Kane going to Bayern Munich? I mean, I've got to be honest. I don't think Levy would sell him to anybody in the Premier League. I think if he does go, he'll go abroad. But I've got a feeling because of his love for Tottenham, he's a Tottenham boy, and because he's got that chance of, you know, catching Alan Shearer's Premier League record, I can't see him leaving. What do you think?
Well, it's now or never, because I agree with you. I think they've stated if he doesn't leave, he will sign a new contract, and then that will be it. He will be at Spurs for the rest of his career, and he'll probably break Alan Shearer's record. But you know, life's about opportunity, and life's about experience. And you know, I would go to Bayern Munich. He could win the Champions League with them. He's definitely going to win the title. So, but and he won't see out his contract and then go to another English club, which he could equally do as well. So I think it's now or never. I think there's a deadline, isn't there, of the first game. If he hasn't moved by then, he stays. And
I thought that was a strange thing. Strange thing to say that. I thought that was a strange thing for him to say that.
Yeah, because what happens if they get off to a terrible start? And he's then languishing in the bottom 3. The manager's been sacked by the end of August, and he's just signed for another 4 years. That's a crazy thing to say, I think. So we'll see. But you know what? It's lovely to see them having so many problems. Yeah. And we've got Declan.
Yeah. What did Gary think of the Spurs fans walking out at half time at St James's? It didn't surprise me. I mean, that must have been that was just the strangest opening 20 minutes to a game.
Oh my God, it's
I've ever seen.
How many goals was it?
5. Just bizarre.
Oh, honestly, I haven't laughed as much. Some like it all. It was really brilliant. It was lovely. It was like blazing. Oh, it was a lovely, very funny game. Very funny game.
Okay, finishing off, Newcastle United, obviously in the Champions League. That's why we do this show in the build-up. We'll be doing it throughout the season. Let's talk Champions League first. Where do you think Arsenal will finish in the Champions League, and where do you think Newcastle will finish in the Champions League this year?
I think minimum requirement for both teams with the state of European football is quarterfinals. Mm-hmm. That's what I would be expecting. And if they get to the quarters, then I think there's a good chance they'll get to the semis. But I would think minimum requirement is quarterfinals.
Yeah.
That's what I would do.
You've already said you think Arsenal have got a good chance of winning the title this year. Man City probably the only team that can take it off you. I think Newcastle's still a way off from that, unless they get a bit of Leicester luck. But where do you think Newcastle will finish this year? Third?
Yeah. I think they'll cement their place in the top four. But I think that will be determined in how they go in the Champions League.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
So you're fairly confident Newcastle will win a trophy this year as well?
If I was a betting man and I had money on it, I would bet Tottenham would go down and Newcastle would win a trophy.
Yeah, that's a great place to finish. Gary, what are you up? Just a quick plug. What are you up to at the minute? Any work?
Just relaxing for the summer. I've just finished a film called Bermondsey Tales, directed by Michael Ed with John Hanna, and I'm playing the husband of Linda Robson, Mick Roman, head of the family, and then we'll hopefully see what occurs in the next after the summer break, as it were, because everyone goes on holiday, and just waiting for the new season to start.
Great stuff. We'll keep an eye out for that, Gary.
Maybe Harry Kane can come to Arsenal. We'll have Harry. Perfect.
You enjoy the rest of your summer. Enjoy the break. Love to the family, Gary. Thanks for coming on, mate. Take care.
Away the lads.
Up the Arsenal.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.